Welcome to Partners in Peace. My name is Alaric Hutchinson.
And I'm Andrew Hutchinson.
And we are two married modern monks. And we're going to be giving you a makeshift sermon today due to the quarantine. Normally we would be hosting a Sunday service today, and with today being the spring equinox, we actually would be also having a beautiful community brunch and some activities. But again, given the circumstance, we thought it would still be beautiful to share a weekly sermon nonetheless. And hopefully today you'll gain some insight into just ways we could still cultivate gratitude, mindfulness, and peace, even amidst everything that's going on with the coronavirus, the uncertainties, the grief that's taking place, and even the fear and the frustrations coming from the financial strain this is putting on our economy and affecting so many families. But before we jump into all of that, we like to ground ourselves with Living Peace Code. So if you're a first timer listening to this video or watching this video, definitely feel free to recite it back. And this is just a beautiful grounding experience we cultivate every Sunday service. And this is the Living Peace Code. Taking a deep breath in. Peace.
Peace.
People embracing a conscious evolution.
People embracing a conscious evolution.
I am the master of my life.
I am the master of my life.
I master my thoughts.
I master my thoughts.
I master my impulses.
I master my impulses.
I master my emotions.
I master my emotions.
I see through illusion.
I see through illusion.
There is no ignorance.
There is no ignorance.
There is no chaos.
There is no chaos.
There is no duality.
There is no duality.
I forever seek and cultivate.
I forever seek and cultivate
Understanding.
understanding,
Harmony.
harmony,
And transcendence.
and transcendence.
Everything is impermanent.
Everything is impermanent.
Change is the only constant.
Change is the only constant.
I release my attachments to the mundane world.
I release my attachments to the mundane world.
I release my attachments to what I know.
I release my attachments to what I know.
I release my attachments to who I am.
I release my attachments to who I am.
I relinquish
I relinquish
myself.
myself.
I am peace.
I am peace.
People embodying a conscious evolution.
People embodying a conscious evolution.
Deep breath. And what do we often like to point out?
That at the beginning of the code, we are embracing the tenets, and at the end, we are embodying the tenets.
Thank you. And today we're going to be talking more about how everything is impermanent and change is the only constant. So I know that there's a couple things you wanted to share with that, especially how it ties into our Dunisha spirituality with the seasons.
Oh, absolutely. Society has changed so much in the last few days and the last few weeks. And like the code says, everything is impermanent. And so though those changes are occurring rapidly and we all feel a little bit discombobulated, just know that this situation will not last forever. It can't. It will change into something new and will keep evolving along. But it's important to remember that every single day, every single moment, we can choose to be mindful, whether it's really having deep conversations with our friends and family, especially now that we've been so separated from one another. If we choose to go out to a grocery store, thanking anyone we see working there for what they've had to go through the last couple days, or if we're just out in nature, going for a walk, appreciating what's around us. And knowing that this time can be a time for reflection and it can be time to plant seeds. Considering this is the start of spring, we can use this time in quarantine to plant seeds for the summer, for when this situation inevitably evolves into something else.
And that is so beautiful. Thank you. Because it is very true that and this applies to any type of hardships we're going to go through, past, present, and assuredly more in the future. And that how we're responding to the hardships in the present moment is actually it's still planting the seeds for our future blessings or our future pains. And so if we can show up in gratitude and kindness and mindfulness today, even amidst the pressure, the stress, the anger, the grief, the sorrow, etc., fill in the blank with any negativity that you might be experiencing, if we're still tending to our soil, then we're going to see some beautiful results after the fact. But if we lose ourselves amidst this, then even when this time is over, the seeds that we planted, they're not going to be very nutritional for us. They're not going to be very uplifting. And so that's the interesting thing about this work, is that really there is never a reason good enough to not practice peace, which is a quote from my book. There's never a reason good enough to not be in alignment with peace, to not practice peace, etc. Because no matter what we're doing, we're always planting those seeds, and they will be sprouting later on. And there's a beautiful story in the book At Home in the World by Thich Nhat Hanh that kind of encaptures this essence. And it's called An Old Tree Produces New Blossoms. Biologically, I'm getting older and older every day, but in some way I'm getting younger and younger. It's very strange. Every day I wake up and have a new insight, like an old tree producing new flowers, and my love continues to grow. In Vietnam, there is a type of plum tree with yellow flowers which can live a long time. Sometimes its trunk becomes twisted. At Lunar New Year, it produces a lot of lovely flowers that bloom not only on the small, delicate branches, but even at the base of the trunk. I feel like that tree. In the morning, I wake up and there's a new insight springing up deep from inside. It appears without effort. I don't have to practice hard at all. It's like when you plant a seed and water it, it just naturally grows. If you come to my home in France in the month of April, you won't see any sunflowers, yet the farmers had already planted the sunflower seeds. They put manure and compost in the soil and everything is ready. In early June, the stems will have already grown 1 or 2 feet tall, and within a month, the sunflowers will be blooming everywhere. Our practice is to cultivate good seeds in the soil of our mind, knowing that they will mature and bloom in their own time. If we look deeply enough, we can already see the sunflowers in April. Let's breathe that in. So if we look deeply enough, we can already see our peace, our love, our joy months from now, because the seeds are there. And if you don't feel like they're there yet, then this is an opportunity to cultivate them, to plant them. And I think one way I'm going to teach today on how to cultivate these seeds of peace and happiness is a shift in mindset. And the shift in mindset is taking place in, I can't believe that this quarantine is happening to me. Being upset at the world, being upset at the virus, being upset at the government, etc., other countries, it could be literally anything. But when we have the mindset of, I can't believe this is happening to me, why? That is planting seeds of suffering. But when we say, I may not prefer it, but I am choosing to self-quarantine, I am choosing to take a step back, I am choosing to utilize this time away from many of our jobs to cultivate these seeds, it shifts the neurology of our brain. And we are literally planting seeds of consciousness in us that make us so much more receptive to peace and happiness versus suffering. And well, let's go ahead and take a pause and breathe that in. What I love about this is that there are many people who go on silent retreats for 7 days, 10 days, 30 days, even 60 days. I've known people that have even gone on silent retreats for a year or two. And these retreats are designed to help us unplug from society, unplug from technology, unplug really ultimately from the neuroses of our constant overstimulated culture that keep us trapped in our pain and suffering. And although when we go on these silent retreats, a lot of people attest that they're not necessarily all that peaceful at first, because all the subconscious muck comes to the surface, over time, you drastically get to know yourself better, and then you eventually surrender to the natural inherent peace that is always present. And so what I love about studying monks, and especially Eastern philosophy and Buddhism, where this is a common practice, is that let me back up. Wouldn't it be beautiful if we apply that wisdom to this situation right now? Wouldn't it be beautiful if we said, I am choosing this quarantine period of my life as an opportunity to retreat within myself? And although many of us are still busy with our families and taking care of things and tying up loose ends, etc., we can at least quell a lot of the worrying going on because we recognize that a seed of worry planted today is just going to be a blossoming bush, flower, tree, or vegetable of worry tomorrow. But a seed of peace and mindfulness or an act of kindness today will blossom into greater happiness tomorrow. And so really take a note out of Thich Nhat Hanh's story of just how interesting it is that the field in April is barren and it's covered with shit. Literally, it's covered with shit, people. But come June and then come July, that field is just covered with beautiful sunflowers. And we can even consider the sunflower a metaphor for light, for joy, for beauty. And so ultimately, that's really what's going on in our lives right now. And like I said earlier, there's never reason good enough to act out of alignment with peace, because when we're acting out of alignment with peace, or when we're in panic, or when we're in anger, think of times in the past when you have reacted in that way and how often it causes another wound, another harm that then needs to be healed after that. So it's almost like we're adding harm on top of harm, wound on top of wound, rather than taking a step back, practicing PPR from living peace, pause, process, and respond. And rather than reacting to the situations in life, we're learning to respond and cultivate that peace. Let's take a breath. So, any concluding thoughts or any takeaways from that you'd like to share? Or
I'm reminded of when I was a middle school history teacher and I taught my kids about the Great Depression every year. And one assignment I gave them was, we looked at photos from the Great Depression and I asked them to imagine themselves as the person who took that picture and give it a title and explain why they took it. And I remember one of them was a soup kitchen line. And I had students all day long who had pretended to be the photographer. And their title was always, misery, woe, the American dream crushed, things like that. And the very last group I had that day, a young boy raised his hand and he said, I want to title this kindness. And I asked him why. And he said, well, look at the entire soup kitchen line, but look, there's still people there helping. And the story always makes me emotional, because what an amazing way to look at that. We are going to have lives lost through this, and we are going to be tested individually, as families, as a nation, as a world. But this is also an opportunity to look for people helping one another and look for how this is going to point out systems in society that could use improvements, and how we together can collectively decide to make those improvements happen, take care of each other more. And so, just like you mentioned earlier, there's ways to shift perception of this situation in certain respects. And so we can show up every single day with more of a mindset of compassion and connection through all of this, because that will really help not only ourselves feel better, but also the people around us.
And that is a beautiful note to conclude on, wouldn't you say?
Mm-hmm.
So let's take a deep breath together. So it is our intention to continue making these videos. Most likely every Sunday we'll be producing one. Mm-hmm. And definitely feel free, if there's any questions or comments that you have, you're welcome to share it with us, either in comment sections or private messages. We would love to answer questions or go into topics that are important to you. And as always, down below in the description, you can look up my book, Living Peace, Essential Teachings for Enlightenment in the 21st Century, on Amazon. And then we have a Patreon page that has some beautiful audio downloads that you can enjoy. And then there's also other ways to donate. Granted, we know that finances are definitely tight right now, so it's not an expectation. But if you do have an abundance or even just a little bit extra that you'd like to support, we definitely deeply appreciate it. But until next time, anything else? We just want to say, blessed be.
Mm-hmm.